class, you know, people that never would have gone anywhere. I'm a registered nurse. I've worked for 40 years in the community as a nurse, and still I had no idea what I was up against. My youngest daughter in the 9th grade sold pills and got in trouble. And so we went to probation, and I was devastated. I'd never even gotten a speeding ticket in my life. I was a mess. And probation was very, very kind to my family. I couldn't pay the fines. They said, forget about it. Just help her get clean. And we worked with her, and, we fought at times. We were getting places. But constantly, stuff was stolen. I bought a $2,000 computer, and they made counterfeit money on it and sold it on the street for $200. I know this because the FBI came to my house. I'm an intelligent woman, but I absolutely could not know what I was up against. My youngest daughter had a baby that was 2 years old that lived at our house, and I pretty much raised her. And DCFS came to our house and knocked on the door, and they introduced themselves, and they told me, was I aware, the baby had been stuck by a needle with heroin. Wasn't even aware of the heroin. I actually stuttered. I said, heroin, that's in Harlem, that's in East LA. We don't, it's right here, and that was the beginning of a very wide-eyed nightmare. We worked, we tried rehabs, we tried detoxes. She'd walk out of the detox, she'd walk out of the rehab. At that time, you can force them to stay. They have to want to. And that's one thing I hope to get across to you today, is that you can't make them quit using it. They have to want to use it. They have to. And she stole a lot of checks from me. And I'm pretty easygoing, I'm not gonna hold grudge, but I was really angry. And I had put up with so much, and I went and I pressed charges. And I ended up having to go to 17 counties where checks had been written, 2 states, because I wasn't going to jail for bad checks. So she had a boyfriend, and she moved away because she was afraid of the checks. And I didn't see her for about a year, but I talked to her. She would talk to her baby. And then one day out of the blue, she showed up. And it was so good to see her. And she looked a little better, not much, but a little. And then she wanted me to drop the charges for the checks. And I said, I'm not doing it. I said, those laws are there for a reason. You were raised to follow the rules. You were raised to behave under the law. So she took off running because she was afraid I was going to call the police. And that was the beginning of the nightmare. On January 10th, my father, who was supposed to have pneumonia, instead had cancer. We didn't know, and he died. So we were getting ready for the funeral, and it was the night before, and we were laying our clothes out, and we got a telephone call, and it was my middle daughter, and she couldn't understand. They were screaming, just screaming on the phone. And finally, I said, give me the phone, and some man came on, and he was a paramedic, and he was in St. Louis, and he wanted to let me know that my daughter was dead. So it was like Monday to Friday. My dad died on Monday, my daughter died was not going to tell my mom. I was going to let her have the funeral and then afterwards. So we were at the dinner and the priest came, and I didn't know if my mom was going to make it through. I mean, she just was screaming and crying. And I had told her a month ago. I never kept it secret. I did not keep it secret. I lost friends over it, I lost relatives, but I felt that the education from it was more important than my pride. So, I have 2 dead daughters. I have to go through my dad's funeral, and I have to, or 1 dead daughter, the second one hadn't died yet. I had to act like, things were as good as could be for my mom. It was, I can't tell you what it took. I had no sleep. I didn't know if I could pull it off. It was just a nightmare. But we got her buried or cremated. And then I really, now that I knew what I was dealing with, I got control of the baby. I really started. I started rehabs. We started talking. I'm an administrative assistant nurse at Barnes. We did computer research. We looked at all these 1-800 numbers. I spent an entire week calling, asking for help. And to be honest, I had one person call me back. Now this was 8 years ago, so it wasn't up in the forefront yet. There's a lot more out there now. And I do want to warn you, like everything that makes a profit, there are now a lot of heroin clinics that will take several $1,000s from you and then decide the child's not cooperative. And, this didn't seem like there was anywhere to turn. So then my second daughter, I was standing in the one room talking, and she was in the other room. And all of a sudden it got quiet, and I thought, well, where is she? What's she doing? And she was gone, and I thought, well, Tara, and I looked out the window, and she had stolen my car. Well, I only had one car, and I was a traveling nurse at that time. So once again, I called the police. And they were able to get her by evening, and I got my car back. And they wanted bail. She called and wanted bail. And I'm not bailing anybody else out in my life. I've done the last bit of bail I'm going to do. If you do time, you're going to go in there and do time, as far as I'm concerned. So you have to realize she's in jail for heroin and stealing the car, but she's there because we forced her in there. And that's a big issue because they have to want to quit. You can drag them to one place after another, and if they don't want to quit, they can outwit you. So after she got out of her 30 days in jail, we took her to Bloomington to a rehab. And it went well, and she sounded good, and I had tremendous hope. I mean, I loved her so much. And she came home, and we had a really nice day. But then the next day I could see her mood changing. No idea what was going on yet. She was home 6 days, and on Sunday, she got up and she went to Mass with her best friend. And then we went, her friend asked her to be a bridesmaid in her wedding, and she was so happy. She was back living, I was so happy. She had her son was 5 at that time, and it's what you tell the kids. It's just so hard we had kept telling him he was doing the best thing he could do for his mother is to let her be away for a little while, and she would come back, and maybe she would be well. And it was hard. He was, I guess, around 5 at that time. So here she is in the rehab, comes home, and I think, thank God I've saved one of them. And after she'd gone to Mass and, spent time with her best friend, it was the year the Cardinals had won the World Series. And as far as my grandson is concerned, he personally thinks they play for him. And, he was absolutely sure that the only person Albert Pujols rated at was him. I mean, he was just in his glory. And trying to get out of there, the traffic was phenomenal. And my daughter told me she knew a shortcut. And I just did not think. And when we were in Bloomington, one of the things they talked about were triggers. Triggers can be anything. They can be a smell. They can be a house they used to go to. They can be a friend. And she had said in that class that interstate signs were a trigger. And I thought, that how can an interstate sign be a trigger? Come on. And she said, because Mom, you get on the highway and then the next thing you get your heroin. So we went on that horrible highway. We got home. It was Halloween. And we were having a beautiful day. I thank God He gave it to me. And all of a sudden, she wanted to drive the car. And she wanted to go to her sponsor at NA because she was feeling cravings and she needed to talk to them. And she wouldn't be gone 15 minutes. And in Bloomington, they had said you have to start letting them do the things they used to do. You have to let them try to live a normal life. And I said, well, Tara, we're supposed to go trick-or-treating, but I won't be 15 minutes. And I found myself looking at the clock, and we were getting the kids ready. And when 15 minutes went by, which I knew it would, she didn't come home. And her oldest sister called and wanted to talk to her, and I told her what I had done. I let her use the car, and she said, oh my God, you shouldn't have let her use the car. Where is she? I said, I think she's in Wood River. So she was at her father's house, and they started tracking. They got all that tracking on the phone, and here's these two little sets of eyes ready to go trick-or-treating, no mothers. So we dressed them up, and out we went, and we, again, with fear in our hearts, put a brave face on and took them trick-or-treating. And I got a phone call from my daughter. We had just walked back in the house. She said, Mom, we found her. She's on the side of the road. She said, there's other people in the car. She said, come to St. Louis, come to Barnes Hospital. So that's what I did. And I went with my ex-husband. We went as fast as we could. And the girls, my oldest daughter, said they had found her on the side of the road. Whoever took the car and her had thrown her body in the back seat of the car and were sitting in the front seat of the car smoking crack. Couldn't hear that this girl was dying. So they tried CPR, they tried everything, and they took her to Barnes. She wasn't quite dead yet. And having been the administrator there for several years, I knew the routine. I had walked any families down that hall. And they had security waiting with a wheelchair in case I needed it. And I just kept walking, and I got to the grieving room, and there was a minister there. And I sat down, and the doctor came in and said, she's in CAT scan. We're trying to see her brain. And I said, how, what do you think? And he said, I think she's as bad as she can be. So we sat not long, and it doesn't take long to die from heroin. And he came back in and he said, her brain is 4 times the normal size. And now I had to decide. She was on a respirator. I knew there was never any hope. I didn't want her to be a vegetable. I asked could they use any of the organs, and unfortunately she was hepatitis C positive. She's a beautiful girl. She was my angel. So I had to stop life support. So now I've lost 2. And I was even angry at God. I was saying, he'll never give you more than you can handle. I was, where is his money? And, I'm ready to retire. I've got 2 little babies. The little 3-year-old, I didn't think she would, understand as much as she did. And she would just sit and sob and sob. And so we had to put her in grief counseling. And of course she can't explain, so I had to go through it all. And I just was doing terrible at that time. And we went through grief counseling with her, and then they put me in grief counseling. And then they put my little 6-year-old grandson, because he went berserk. He absolutely went berserk. His mother had never broken a promise to him. Why didn't she come back? He punched holes in the wall. I was black and blue. He almost kicked my teeth out. My teeth were loose. I had to call the crisis line to get help. They came and they wanted to admit him, and I begged. I said, I promised him I wouldn't leave him. He's had so many promises broke. I said, I can take care of him. I'm a registered nurse. His pediatrician, Dr. Kathy, gave me medicine. We sedated him. And still, I had to lay on top of him for a long time. I mean, days and days and days. And the school worked with me. We got the counselors in, the social workers. We found a room where he could go and cry in private. They prepared the children in the class. They did a wonderful job. But he became very, very bitter towards me because I let her have the car. And I felt like I totally had let the world down. I should have thought, I knew she hadn't gone in. I hadn't let her go anywhere, but you have to go to bed at night. You have to go to sleep. I was telling him, everything we had was stolen. Our lawnmowers, our air conditioners, all our money, all our checks. I, gradually got wise and stuff, got a safe. They pried the safe out of the floor. Couldn't get it open, so they drove down the interstate and threw the safe out the window at 80 miles an hour to break it open. If there would have been a car behind them, something could have killed somebody. And the way I know that is because some strange woman showed up at my door and gave me my passport, which was in that safe. So I have a lot of people now, social workers, grief counselors, a couple of grief counselors couldn't handle it. They just sat there in Baltimore and I did. It was just the biggest nightmare. I didn't know where to go. The way my girls say they got addicted is at a party. They say they shot up. I don't know. They say that you can't use it even one time, and I truly, truly believe that is true in the right person. So here I had one child left and 2 grandchildren to raise, and I put her in detox, and the girl on the next bed, they took me in, and her and her company all sat there in the hospital in the bed doing heroin. So we just took her out. We didn't even finish it. It was ridiculous, you know. And I really let them know what I thought. We tried rehabs. She went to jail multiple times, arrested multiple times. I don't think you can get much lower than I was. I just didn't know what to do. She was just a mess. So we started then with Dr. Boone, who is wonderful at the Heroin clinic in Alton at Wells Spring. And we made an appointment, and she had examined Tracy, and when we came in, she told me that she felt Tracy probably had maybe 2 weeks to live. And I was crumpled. I just went in. I couldn't lose them all. And she said, I really don't think in your case it's going to be the heroin. She said, yes, also that will contribute. She said, but I think it's going to be grief also from losing, because she found both of her sisters dead. So we tried the methadone for a while, and it worked really well. She gained her weight back, she looked good, but she says that she was a prisoner having to go every day, and she would not go to classes, would not. So once again, you can lay the horse water, but they have to want to drink. So I was just at my wit's end, and then her boyfriend's parents kicked him out. So they had no, because they had their own house. They had nowhere to go and ended up at my house on the condition that they would go into rehab. And they came home one night, and I knew that they were high as they could be. And her boyfriend came up and talked to me, and he was talking and talking. And I said, Adam, where's Tracy? And he said, oh, she's downstairs. She's got the door locked and won't let me in. But we had taken the door off of their room because we did not want anything in that house. And I said, Adam, there isn't a door. I said, go downstairs and check on Tracy. And I heard the most horrible scream. And I went, and she was sitting straight up on her bed, dead. And I got her to the floor, and I started CPR. And I got to the point I couldn't go anymore. And I knew if I stopped, that was it. And I knew it wasn't working. And I gave up. I stopped. And all of a sudden, when I turned her, there was a gurgling noise, and I went back at it like crazy. And we got her back. We saved her. So we rushed her to the hospital in an ambulance. Adam went with us, her boyfriend, and they were able finally. They can't even get veins out of these heroin. They come in, they can't even draw blood because there's no veins left. And she had a hoodie on. She always wore these long, dark hoodies. And they cut around that, and there was just boils and abscesses everywhere. And just a big black abscess in the jugular vein. She'd been shooting up in the neck because she couldn't find anything. And she was alert now, and she told me it was a little bitty vein back here. So they were able to get blood from that vein. And they got her to a point that she was able to leave. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye that Adam he was leaning against the wall, but he was starting to do this. And I thought, oh my God, I bet he's taking it already too. And so we got him to the car, and needless to say, I pulled over at Rock Springs Park from Alton Memorial and started CPR on Adam. And at that moment, I thought I've done more CPR on my own family than I have done as a nurse in 40 years. I can't do it anymore. The breaking point was my grandson. Tracy and Adam had come home in the middle of the afternoon. He came home from school. He came up screaming up, says, Grandma, they've got a needle. I went down there and they swore they did not. And I said, Adam, let me see your legs, because that was where he was primarily shooting, and there was nothing there. Still swearing, good news. Nothing on this arm. I said, Adam, you've got two. Let me see the other one. Well, the blood was just running down his arm. My grandson, by that time, because we had been able to protect him. DCFS helped us a lot. We had been doing, they were the ones that told me to get custody, which was a huge, very wise decision. And it got into a horrible fight. The little boy picked up a bat. He said that heroin had killed his mother, and he wasn't living with heroin. And I said, Tracy, you've pushed me farther than I can go. In your home, if you want to do it, I can't stop you. But in my home, it's not happening. It's not happening. Now, along the course of all of this, when I first met probation, I met Jennifer, and she was so kind. And then, when the first one died, she had been done with her for a while, but she sent me a sympathy card, and I thought that was really nice. Well, when the second one died, she sent me another sympathy card, and I knew she was a good woman. When she had shook my hand, she really firmly shook my hand. I judge people a lot of times more by their nonverbal conversation than by what they say. And we went in and we talked to Jennifer, and it was Tracy and her back and forth. It was a useless visit, not that it was Jennifer's fault. And finally, after seeing the little boy, when he had seen a needle and seen them shooting up, there's no more. I made up my mind, and I called Jennifer in the morning, and luckily she was in, and I got to talk to her, and I started crying, and I said, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. I can't go to any more rehab, any more jails. I said, I didn't grow up like this. This isn't how I want to live. And she said, I'm in a meeting, but I will call you back. I sat on my bed with the telephone in my hand for 6 hours. I was not going to miss that one. And I said, Jennifer, I can't go on. I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I gathered all the stuff they had in the room, called the police. Police came. Here's a whole bag of paraphernalia I found. He looked at me and wanted to know how he knew it wasn't mine. And I kind of thought I might go to jail that day. But he he made me write a paper on not enabling. And I did, and I mean, he was a good enough man. He was like all of us. It's a huge mountain to climb. So I asked, when Jennifer called, I told her, I just can't do it. I just can't. I don't want to. And she said, let me talk to somebody and I'll call you back. And so the next thing I know, I have a man on the phone. I don't know who he was. I would give him a big hug if I could ever find him. And he said if it was my daughter, I'd put her in jail. And I said, I've already got you dead. I don't want it. And he said, it doesn't really matter what you want. He said, you're going to be dead before the end of the month. So then they let me talk to Jennifer, and she said, we will help you in any way. The reason I had called her initially was because my oldest daughter had told me that Jennifer asked her, had I ever been arrested? Well, I wasn't arrested, but my dog jumped over the fence one time. That was my criminal career. So Jennifer didn't really know who I was, I realized. And I realized I had a gold mine sitting right there, and I hadn't used it. So after her boss had talked to me, she got back on the phone and she said, I will do what you want me to do, whatever you can tolerate. And I said, we've tried everything else, Jennifer. I want to put her in prison. So I never thought I would do this, but I did set her up. And after they went on their heroin run, you know, went straight down to their room, I called the police. And when they came in, it was a little officer and a woman, and I said, oh no, this isn't enough. We need more police, more police. I mean, I wasn't rational anymore. And they did everything I asked, and they arrested. And I could hear her say, my mom wouldn't have done this. And she had a warrant out for probation. Well, they took her to jail. I mean, I didn't talk to her on the phone. I didn't go see her. And after a month, she went to prison. And Dr. Boone had told me one time that heroin affects the brain in a different way than we understand. The brain creates serotonin, which is a chemical, the feel-good chemical in our brain. It's what makes us laugh. It makes us happy. It's what gives us reason to go on. But heroin can block that for up to 6 to 7 months. Because I had wanted her put on an antidepressant because of the loss of her sister. She was extreme. And Dr. Boone said it won't work because those receptors are blocked. So we put her in prison, and all of a sudden I got a letter, and it was my daughter thanking me for saving her life. And there has not been one day that I haven't gotten a phone call or a letter with how much she loves me. What she did tell me and her boyfriend is that they didn't realize they were sick. They just thought everybody hated them. So if you're dealing with somebody on heroin, you gotta keep it at a reasonable level. Screaming at them, fighting with them, it isn't going to do it because they've got to want to do it. And if they think nobody cares and there's no hope, what's the use of wanting to get off of it? That's the only few good minutes they have. Along the way, I have found some very good places to go. The picture I passed around was from a wedding, and that was the last time they ever looked like that. I had heard of a place called Arca, and it's Assisted Recovery Centers of America. It's a very expensive place. It mostly works with nurses and doctors because of their proximity to opiates. There was a lot of drug abuse in the medical field. Believe me, because as supervisor, we had to deal with it, and it was just all the time. They couldn't even do random drug testing because they couldn't have got enough staff. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in the low ends of life and the high ends of life. I've heard people say Taliban is doing. I mean, I don't know the answer. I know that you have to be careful. You can't trust them. You can't. You just can't let it go. You can't let it ride. As far as I've found, the real help came from jail. From 6 months, when her head began to clear out. She even said one day, and she didn't know this, and she said, "Mom," she said, "I'm laughing all the time at silly comedies, at jokes people make." She said, "I don't know what's happened to me." Well, that was about 6 months, and that serotonin was back where it should be. So that's pretty much my story. I am raising 2 little grandchildren. They're both doing well. We've got the little boy in select league baseball, and he's going to be a baseball player in his mom's memory. The little girl only understands so much. I know that when we were taking Tracy out on the stretcher into the ambulance, she just sat down on the floor and she said, "Well, there goes mommy number 3. And then cut like a knife. So my only advice is don't give up. Don't trust them. They'll fool you every time. I chased cars down the street with a notebook, my nightgown, barefoot, taking down license plates. I did everything I needed to do. I wish that I would have put the others in prison, but I didn't know what I know now. I know there's lots of people struggling. Like I told you over Easter weekend, people on one side of me, son died, and the people on the other side, his daughter died the same day from drugs. We were talking about possibly starting a support group out in the Bethalto, Rosebud Heights area. But that's pretty well my story. Had to wait till about now, because otherwise they would have had to bring a beach towel for the tears. But now, if I can just help any one person save their child, that's my goal. Thank you very much.
That's going to be hard to follow there. A lot. The father of my dad. We got 3 boys, 19, 20, and 23. Married for 24 years. Typical family. Kids raised in church. Coached baseball 13 years for all my kids. You know, just like everybody else, we know we can't raise them. They can hit anybody, no matter what class you're in, salary level, whatever. My boy started when he was 18, Bradley, my middle son. His, I guess, all started with a sports injury at school. He was very athletic. Freshman level was a varsity soccer player. started with his surgery, bike and whatnot. And, well, next thing I know, it's a year after that, he quit all sports, kind of stepped away from the family. Came to me in July of 2012 and told me he had a problem. Was addicted to heroin. Completely blew me away. I had no idea that was even going on at all. Put him in rehab. Went through a month of rehab, which isn't long enough for people that's dealt with family members you've had in rehab. Insurance wants to release them after 21 to 26 days because they're medically stable. Not long enough at all. Got out of rehab, was out a week in overdose, was on life support for 3 days. Thought we were going to lose him then. People he's with rolled him out of the ER on the curb, stole his wallet from him at the door. So went through that, out of jail, back into rehab. We're out of the hospital, straight to rehab. This would have been for the second time. Spent 6 weeks there. The insurance paid for 3 weeks. I paid for the other 3 weeks at roughly $5,000 a week. Only do that so many times. Needless to say, I'm more till I'm dead because I spent retirement. You know, I'm sure everybody else or some people's dealt with that. Anyway, after the second overdose in rehab was out, I decided to send him to South Carolina to live with my sister, thinking it'd get him out of the area. He was there a month and came back home. Got with the same crowd. Happened again, another overdose. This time my son, 17 at the time, found him on the living room floor. Had to call the paramedics and they were able to revive him with Narcan, which I do keep now on hand at all times. Fortunately, I haven't had to use it. Currently, my son's in jail. I had him arrested January 4th of this year. When he got out of rehab the last time, which would have been Thanksgiving, I brought him home. We had our Thanksgiving dinner, and I couldn't have him in the house anymore, so he had to leave because of the stealing and, you know, as she said, he had nothing left after a while. But I had to put him out of the house and he had to deal with it on his own because I couldn't help him anymore. I did everything I could do, so I turned him over to my higher power. I didn't see him until Christmas Day. He came by, weighed 148 pounds, generally he's 190. Looked bad, near death. I was able to talk to the court systems here, and he had missed probation appointments, so I had him arrested. Turned him in and they put him in a boot camp in Picnickville is where he is now. He's been there for 5 months. Heaven did talk to him for the first 4 months, but when I did finally talk to him, you know, the first letters I got, he blamed me, you know, I did this to him. Now he realizes that it probably saved his life. He's due to get out July 27th, so not sure what to do with him after that. Hopefully he's got his mind right. As she said, it takes 6, 7 months to get straight. So hopefully this will give him a good head start, choose a different path. I don't know what else to do for him. One thing I wanted to speak about was the rehabs, when they get out of rehabs. As I said, a month isn't long enough, and I'd like to see something done with getting more support for these people that need help. Well, and help for the family members, because we can go through a lot. It's affecting my whole family. You know, my youngest son, he's still having issues with finding his brother. Not sure what can be done, but I know there needs to be more resources for recovery, because it is a disease. My son was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. We found that out through all of this. And a lot of the addicts out there that, a lot of them do have a mental disorder that goes along with this mental illness. And I know a lot of times they end up in jail or with all the things that go along with addiction, with selling drugs and stealing and a number of things that goes along with it. I don't think going to jail is the answer. Sometimes it is for a short term to keep them alive, because that's all we're trying to do at this point is keep them alive until they realize they need help and take it upon themselves to get it. Because as parents, we can only do so much to help them. Then it's up to them. As she had said, that they gotta want it. I guess for my son, what I'm trying to do is just keep him alive long enough to want it, to realize he wants it. Like I said, hopefully when he gets out, things will be different. He says they're gonna be, but I've heard that numerous times. Things are gonna be better, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. And one day I see him sit there nodding off, here we go again, same story. So. And for you people out there that are dealing with this, if you have an active addict in your family or a loved one or friend, Narcan is a good thing to keep on hand. You can get the overdose revival kits. There's a place in Belleville, Bethany place, that will supply these and train you on how to use it. I've given out quite a few kits to families in the Alto area. I've actually had to, well, at this point, 5 different families I had to talk to about their children being on heroin, and they need to do something about it. Of course, they get mad at you at first until they realize, as they said, like, as I did, not my son, he couldn't do that. But anyway, there's a lot of it out there. It's everywhere. You can't get away from it. And you don't realize it until you get involved. I've learned more than I ever want to know about heroin dealers, addicts, police departments. They all know me pretty well at this point with my kids. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have. I hope you people out there that are dealing with this get help for yourself, because you got to take care of yourself. That's the main thing I've learned that. Going to Nor-Anon meetings has helped me a lot, give me a good perspective, hear about everybody else's stories. And it's helped me cope. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Dolly and Dave, just wanted to thank you guys for coming today. Thank you for sharing with us. Unfortunately, the stories that you tell are representative of the stories that a whole lot of people are experiencing. So thank you for sharing, and being a voice for all the families that are hurting out there. I don't really have any questions. I don't know if anybody has something really specific they want to ask. Otherwise, I'd say maybe we just close on that. Take this with us and think about it. We already have another meeting on June 25th. It'll be here in the county boardroom at 1:30 in the afternoon. And at that time, we're going to hear from an intervention specialist. We're going to hear from someone from the St. Louis County Heroin Task Force that's going to talk about their experiences. I know that they've been at this a lot longer than we have, so we're going to learn from them without having to reinvent the wheel and everything, kind of see what their experiences were and get some, hopefully some helpful guidance on that. But I really want to encourage everyone to be here for Rebecca Moen from Recovery 360. Her message is, I got to hear her speak yesterday, and just her message of hope, of the opportunities for families to deal with an active addict, resources that can help people going through this. She's a wealth of knowledge and experience and has a lot of resources she can share. So I really encourage families and individuals that are going through this to be here to hear about that, because there's a lot to learn. I learned a whole lot yesterday hearing about it, and I would encourage people to be there because I think she has a lot to offer as well. So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for being here again today, and we're going to continue this discussion. We have a lot more to hear and a lot more to learn, but today was a very important part and a very important